Oh, what happened? Did you lose the tuition money, Emerson? I'm so sorry, dear. I didn't know. I'll bring you lots of souvenirs from the Mediterranean, okay? What's with that look, Celine? Are you unsatisfied? Don't complain when you're just a housewife. My name is Celine. I'm 48 years old. I'm a housewife. My husband, Mason, 2 years my senior, works as an office employee. We are a family of 4, my daughter Emerson, my mother-in-law Harper, and us. My alarm clock rings at 4:30 in the morning. It's a daily routine, so I often wake up even before it goes off. I get up early to accompany Harper on her walks. It's just a walk around the house, usually done in 30 minutes at most. Despite this, because it's dangerous, Mason insists on having me accompany her. I suggested, "Why can't you go with her?" But he replied, "You just don't get it. I'm working, and I want every extra minute of sleep in the morning I can get. You're a housewife, you have all the time in the world." Thus, the responsibility was pushed onto me. Summer was manageable, but winter was dark and indeed dangerous. Despite my suggestions to take a break, Harper stubbornly continued her routine. As expected, on one cold winter morning, Harper tripped over a small stone and fell. "Are you okay, Harper?" As I reached out to help her up, she snapped back at me angrily. "Hey, Celine! What good are you if you can't even do this simple task? You're so useless." She often finds reasons to hurl insults at me. When we return from the walk, the next activity is Tai Chi. Even here, Harper finds fault with me. "Celine, I've told you before, why can't you get these simple movements right? It's like this, do it like this." "No, that's not right." "Oh, you're so slow to learn." To me, her moves seem more like a comic routine than Tai Chi, but I keep my laughter to myself. After Tai Chi, I prepare breakfast and make sandwiches for Emerson. By this time, Emerson is already up, but Mason is still asleep. When I try to wake him, he responds gruffly, "Keep it down, you idiot woman. Can't you let me sleep in peace?" If I let him sleep until the last minute before work. "Why didn't you wake me? Now I don't even have time to shave." He gets angry again. "Whether I wake you or not, maybe you should set your own alarm clock." To which I responds, "I work every day for this family, and this is the thanks I get?" He takes his frustration out on me. These arguments always seem to happen in front of Harper. "Celine, he is right. We rely on him for our livelihood, so you should show more gratitude." She always sides with Mason. I do appreciate him, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't silently put up with his complaints every day and handle all the household chores. I wait up for him when he comes home late without notice, and I've never let the house go without what it needs. Supporting a husband is part of a wife's role, but Mason, without acknowledging my contributions, keeps demanding gratitude and barking orders from his high horse. And then there's Harper, who complains about everything. Living with these two is a constant struggle. Initially, I didn't choose to be a housewife. Before having children, I worked full-time in an office. I quit when our child was born, planning to return to work once they started elementary school. That plan changed because of Harper. After Mason's father passed away and he decided to have Harper move in with us, she started demanding that I accompany her everywhere, to the hospital, shopping, her social gatherings. Our house is conveniently located. The bus stop is right outside, and Harper is perfectly capable of getting around. She's just being unreasonable. And she doesn't help with household chores. Mason unilaterally decided on this living arrangement without considering my opinion. Initially, I hoped her would help with housework. That hope was dashed on the very first day of living together. Celine, I've been a housewife much longer than you, raising children successfully. Now, I plan to enjoy my free time. She stated that outright and truly did nothing at all. If she had just stayed quiet, it might have been bearable, but no matter how diligently I did the housework, she kept calling me a parasite, useless. At one point, I even considered getting a part-time job. But when I mentioned this to Mason, he became irritable and retorted, "What? My earnings aren't enough for you? That's rude. Besides, no company would hire someone as dumb as you. Want to work outside like before? Don't be ridiculous. You should just keep quiet and do the housework." His salary isn't great, but he lords it over me because we have no mortgage. I continued being a housewife, believing I was doing my best for the family. Every time he demanded gratitude, I always thought to myself, "You should be the one showing gratitude first." I always thought this to myself. Since living together began, Harper's dependency on me grew worse. I was the one who always had to drive her everywhere. Carry heavy things? That was me. Any inconvenient errand? Also me. As Harper's clinginess worsened, Mason's domineering nature escalated. He started to utter hurtful words he would never have said when it was just Emerson and us living together. Whenever I tried to stand up for myself, he would invariably snap. "Shut up, you're just a housewife. Who do you think feeds you, you parasite?" That's what he would say. One day, having reached my limit, I started job hunting without Mason's permission and secured a part-time job for myself. When I told Mason and Harper about getting the job, Mason said, "I'll allow it on the condition that you don't let the quality of your housework drop." Fed up with his arrogant tone, I responded, "That's impossible. If you don't want the quality to drop, then Harper will need to help with the housework." He angrily retorted, "You expect Mom to do housework? How cruel. Mom's nearly 80 years old." Harper, with tears in her eyes, pleaded, "That's so cold. Doing housework at my age could hurt my back and legs. I agreed to live with you because you said you'd take care of the housework. Don't make such unreasonable demands." Eventually, my request for shared housework was essentially ignored, and even when I started working and came home late, Harper didn't do any housework at all. I continued to get up earlier and go to bed later than anyone else in the family, accompanying Harper on her early morning walks without a break. I became so busy that I often skipped breakfast and lunch, leading to more days without meals. One day, I fainted from anemia at work. When the company called my family, it wasn't Mason who came to pick me up, but my father, Gavin, from my childhood home. I went back to my parents' house with him. The moment I stepped into the familiar entrance of the home where I grew up, the tears I had been holding back overflowed. I told my father about everything Mason and Harper had done to me, crying all the while. After a while, Mason came to pick me up. Unusually unsettled, he made a brief eye contact to my father and took me back home. At home, an irritated Harper was waiting. "Celine, you are so sarcastic, going back to your parents' house. It's as if you're implying I've been oppressing you. If you had told us, we would have come to pick you up. That's terrible of you." She continued to complain incessantly, not even asking about my fainting or how I was feeling. I was utterly exasperated, but I didn't have the energy to respond. "I'm sorry," I said, and then I took the day off to rest. After that, I started finding ways to reduce the burden of household chores. like using delivery services instead of going to the grocery store and buying ready-made meals, even if it was a bit more expensive. I also started asking Harper to use taxis when I couldn't provide transportation. I didn't want to faint again and be a burden at work. Meanwhile, the harassment from Mason and Harper only got worse. "You're lowering the quality of housework. Such a terrible wife. A useless and foolish wife." Harper continued with her complaints. "I can't eat something this salty. Oh my, it's disgusting. It's like animal feed." Such snide remarks were made persistently, every single day. One day, Harper suddenly suggested going on a trip. She spoke to me in a cajoling tone. "Hey, Celine. You must have saved up some money from your part-time job by now. How about we go relax at a resort this holiday season?" That year, Emerson was preparing for college, so a trip was really not feasible. "Well, Emerson has extracurricular activities and exams, so it's difficult this year. If she gets into college, we can think about a summer vacation." I tried to deflect, but for some reason, Harper suddenly became angry. "Celine, that was such a snide move, going back to your parents' house. It makes it look like I've been oppressing you. We would have come to pick you up if you had told us." That was harsh. Frustrated with her ranting, I retorted. "Listen, I didn't say we wouldn't go on a trip. I'm saying the timing is bad right now. Emerson is considering transferring if she doesn't get into her first choice college. If she has to transfer, we'll need to buy new textbooks. Can you please stop interfering with her efforts to get accepted? If you insist, I'll make a reservation for you, but please go alone." After I said this, she turned red with anger. "You devil!" She hissed a parting shot and stormed off to her room. I had been saving my hard-earned salary diligently, preparing for Emerson's college entrance fees and tuition. Since Emerson was planning to transfer if necessary, the money would be needed either way. I didn't want to waste it on a frivolous family vacation for Harper's whims. Several months later, Emerson successfully got into her first choice university. Watching her daily efforts in studies and extracurricular activities, I felt relieved and incredibly happy. The next day was her high school graduation. During breakfast, Harper, with a smug smile, said, "Celine, we're going on an overseas trip tomorrow. Just so you know." "What? You mean Mason is going too?" Harper had a triumphant look on her face. "Yes. You did nothing, so I talked to Mason and he booked it right away. Guess where? The Mediterranean. It's been so long since our last overseas trip. Oh, I can't wait." "Harper, are you mistaken about the departure date? Tomorrow is Emerson's graduation ceremony. He is supposed to attend." "Right, Mason?" I looked at Mason. He was silently sipping his soup, but his face seemed to be holding back a laugh. Emerson, present at the table, looked puzzled. Harper showed me the airline tickets with a mean smile on her face. The departure date was indeed tomorrow. I was so shocked that I froze. Mason, with a nasty grin, said, "I was planning to attend the graduation ceremony, but then I thought it's more important to be filial. Just take some photos of the ceremony for me. That'll be enough for me, thanks." That remark snapped me out of my daze. "Filial? Mason, we didn't get any bonuses because of the recession. Where did you find the budget for a Mediterranean trip?" When I asked, his response was unbelievable. "From your savings, of course. Didn't you say it was for the summer vacation? It's the same thing if we use it now." I was astonished and appalled. "That savings was for Emerson's tuition, I told you that." What about her enrollment fees? Can't be helped. We've already bought the tickets. Well, I have to go to work. Mom, please pack the bags. As he left in a hurry, I frantically checked my bank balance on my mobile phone. Almost nothing was left. I turned pale with shock. Emerson looked at me, worried. Harper, still smirking, said, "Oh, what happened? Did the tuition money disappear?" My bad. I said anywhere would do, but Mason wanted to be filial, you see. We could have saved more if it was just a holiday trip. Sorry, Emerson, I didn't know that. We'll bring lots of souvenirs from the Mediterranean. Emerson and I were both frozen in shock. The next morning, Mason and Harper left in high spirits. I was so frustrated that I felt like crying, but I desperately held back the tears. Emerson, who should have been celebrating her graduation, looked gloomy. It was natural, considering her father had brushed her off and used up her college enrollment money. While I understood Mason's desire to be filial, it was unforgivable for a father to deplete the entire savings I had meticulously built for Emerson's tuition. That day, as I watched Emerson receive her diploma at the graduation ceremony with tears in my eyes, I made up my mind to execute a certain plan. It was a last resort. Something I had thought of doing if Mason and Harper's harassment became unbearable. I called my father at my childhood home. I had previously told him about the ongoing harassment from Harper and Mason. This plan was originally his idea, born out of concern for me. With his consent, I gripped a hammer and went to Harper's room. I started to break down the walls with the hammer. It was unexpectedly exhilarating, so I handed Emerson a hammer and together, we went around hitting various spots. Once the room was demolished and I felt a sense of relief, I called a demolition company. The next day, the workers arrived and started demolishing the house. We packed our belongings, watching from a distance as the floors were ripped up and doors fell, and in the evening, we left the house and moved to my father's place. The following Sunday, while relaxing at my parents' house, my mobile phone rang. "Hey, Celine! It's me! What's going on? Our house is gone! Where are you now?" It was Mason, back from the Mediterranean. I told the flustered him. "As you can see, I had it demolished. Your and Harper's belongings have been sent to your brother's place." "What? How dare you do this on your own? Give me back my house." "The house you were living in is gone. You might as well rely on your brother now." I said this and hung up the phone. A while later, the doorbell at my father's house rang. Mason and Harper barged in, suitcases in hand, shouting. Harper was red-faced with anger. "How could you do this? You destroyed the unique house that Mason built. Do you even realize what you've done?" My father and I exchanged glances and burst into laughter. It seemed that even in this situation, Mason hadn't told his mother the truth. Standing next to Harper, Mason had shrunk and stayed silent. "What's so funny?" As Harper fumed with rage, my father gently explained. "There seems to be a misunderstanding. That house was in Celine's name." "What?" Harper made a startled sound. "It's true. The land originally belonged to me." "But even if the land was yours, Mason built the house. He worked hard and paid for it with his salary. It was Mason's house in his name, and Celine demolished it without permission. We'll demand compensation for this." Mason was still silent as ever. Harper seemed genuinely unaware of the truth. I reluctantly began to explain. "My father built that house." She turned to me with bloodshot eyes. Her eyes were so wide with surprise, they looked as if they might pop out. What are you saying? Mason was paying a monthly mortgage. He worked hard and earned the money to build that house. Don't destroy his hard work and then tell such an obvious lie. Harper, you really don't know? The land belonged to my father, and he built the house. Moreover, the house was in my name. This is the truth. He built the house on the condition that it would be in my name. Mason was aware of this. You seem to be under a big misunderstanding, but please ask him about it. Mason was trembling slightly, still looking down. Harper shouted at him. You're lying, Mason! Say something in your defense! He, in a weak voice, admitted, Sorry, Mom. What Celine is saying is true. The house was built by her father for us. Then, what about the mortgage? Silence filled the room, speaking volumes. And that silence said it all. Mason had boasted to Harper about a house my father built as if it were his own achievement. My father spoke quietly. Mason, I built that house for you and Celine to live happily. Legally speaking, it may have been different, but in my heart, I had given it to you. However, unfortunately, Celine was unhappy living there. You and your mother treated her like an unpaid housekeeper. I had essentially lent the land and house to you for free on the condition you would make Celine happy. But since she wasn't happy, I'm taking back the land. Harper's face went pale as if she was about to faint, opening and closing her mouth in disbelief. It was understandable that she had believed all this time that her son had built the house. Celine, show them what you've prepared. Prompted by my father, I nodded, stood up, and brought the completed divorce papers to the table. I spoke slowly. I didn't want to destroy the house where I had lived for so long. But you two have treated me like an animal for years. No matter how much you insulted me, I did my duty as a housewife and a wife. But I couldn't bear it any longer. That house no longer exists. Let's end our relationship here today. Mason was slumped over, his head down in defeat. Harper, with a face as white as a famous painter's depiction of a screaming person, was frozen with her mouth agape. This is how Mason and I got divorced. Afterwards, Mason started living in an old house with Harper, reportedly so run down that it was infested with mice. Rumor has it that the house is so old that it's infested with mice. It was a far cry from the spacious, beautiful house my father had built, and surely very inconvenient. But that was no longer my concern. Along with Emerson and my father, I am living happily at my childhood home. My father covered Emerson's university enrollment fee, which I later repaid with my earnings. Despite her busy schedule with studies, Emerson seems to enjoy every day. She happily helps with the household chores. With the help from them, I have more time and financial freedom. Maybe I'll start taking some classes for myself. I'm contemplating that. Right now, I'm extremely happy. My name is Luna. I was a 28-year-old who worked in a flower shop located in an office building, creating flower arrangements. My husband, Oliver, was 30, 2 years older than me, and worked as a hairstylist in the same building on the second floor. He was not exactly a celebrity stylist, but he was quite popular. We were celebrating our 3rd year of marriage that year. Apart from the fact that we had been unable to have children, I thought we were doing well as a happy couple. But it seemed I was the only one who thought that way. How did we first meet? Oliver used to frequently buy flowers for his salon from the flower shop on the 1st floor. Initially wary of Oliver, who was skilled in conversation due to his job, I gradually found it natural to have him by my side. How long was it after we started dating? Oliver invited me to dinner at his parents' house, saying he wanted to introduce me to his family. There, Oliver's brother and his fiancée were also present. I had heard about Oliver's struggles being compared to his excellent younger brother, but his brother was unpretentious and amiable, easy to talk to. Handsome, good-natured, and dependable, his brother had it all. Can't blame the parents for comparing, really. His fiancée, too, was beautiful and seemed quite talented. A stunningly attractive couple. Sitting opposite them, I couldn't help but wonder if I would be compared to his brother's bride-to-be if I married Oliver. During the lively conversation over dinner, "Have you guys decided on a date for the wedding ceremony?" Oliver asked his brother. Then, "We're about to decide. We'd love some suggestions for good venues," the brother and his fiancée replied. Oliver's brother, a promising banker, and his fiancée, working at a securities firm, were both solid professionals. Thinking they would prefer something luxurious, considering they'd invite bosses and work colleagues, I suggested some famous venues where my corporate friends had their weddings. The fiancée searched the venues on her mobile phone, happily engrossed in a page showing a venue with a garden chapel. Then Oliver chimed in. "Hey, why don't we do the wedding ceremony together? How about a restaurant wedding?" And so he had proposed with a casual tone. It was something I had hoped would happen eventually, but I was shocked by his sudden suggestion, especially since he hadn't yet formally met my parents. Then, from somewhere, I heard a distinct sking noise. I couldn't believe it, but it seemed like the sound came from my BIL's fiancée. She was making an incredibly dissatisfied face and muttering under her breath. BIL's girlfriend might be okay with such a ceremony, but I. Then Lucas, Oliver's brother, exclaimed, "Bro, that's a great idea! These kinds of stylish ceremonies are becoming more popular." He seemed genuinely excited about Oliver's suggestion. Being more displeased, the fiancée glared at me more, as if to stop Oliver from saying whatever he wanted. But she was glaring at the wrong person. If she had a problem, I wished she would speak up to the enthusiastic brothers instead. Subsequently, driven by the brothers' excitement, we ended up planning a restaurant wedding, and everything progressed quickly. In a flurry, we managed to greet my parents, and the four of us dined out to choose a venue. As days passed, the once disgruntled fiancée warmed up to Oliver, who was now BIL, and they got along so well that one would think they were the couple getting married. However, her attitude towards me remained unchanged. And so, 6 months later, the two couples held their restaurant weddings. After the marriage, I switched from full-time to part-time at work, focusing more on household chores. I left for work after sending Oliver off, returned home earlier to prepare dinner, and waited for Oliver's return. This became my routine. Sometimes, my BIL and his wife, both working full-time, relied on our dinner unexpectedly. It seemed cooking was too much of a hassle for them. Camila, my CL, came with just a token gift, evidently expecting me to cook, sparing herself the effort. At the dinner table, Camila oddly sat next to Oliver instead of her husband, treating me more like a convenient housekeeper. Honestly, their visits were far from welcome. Moreover, she indirectly criticized me, saying I looked plain or that my only talent was messing with flowers. I couldn't stand being demeaned in front of Oliver, but I hated confrontations, so I pretended not to mind Camila's words. Instead, after they left, "Why does she look down on people so much? It's terrible to imply someone's worthless if they don't work at an office." I vented to Oliver. "She's a competent and successful woman. Maybe you're just hearing it that way, Luna. It sounds like you're envious. You shouldn't say things like that." But his response was always defensive of Camila. Oliver, proud of his brother's achievements, seemed unwilling to hear anything negative about his brother's wife. It felt like he was implying I was the problem, listing all of Camila's virtues instead. Recently, my daily life had changed a bit due to Lucas's sudden solo assignment. Camila, too, seemed somewhat reluctant to come uninvited to our dinners alone. With fewer visits from her, I was free from her snide comments and had been able to spend my days more peacefully. But now, a different worry had surfaced. For some reason, Oliver had been coming home late at night, day after day, leaving me to have dinner and go to bed alone. It was really worrying that he had been returning home after midnight so frequently. I hoped he didn't fall ill. One morning, as Oliver hurriedly got ready for work. "You've been coming home late recently. Are you okay? I'm worried you might wear yourself out." I asked him. Oliver didn't even look at me. No need to worry. It's just a contest. I'm busy preparing for a hair contest." He stammered. I haven't heard anything about a hair contest. Usually, he'd make a big deal about entering a hair contest weeks in advance, but this time, nothing. Isn't that strange? Sensing his haste, I asked, "When is this contest? You didn't mention it before. Did you decide to enter suddenly?" Without turning face to me, he replied, "Yeah, that's right. I overlooked the invitation. I've been busy arranging for a cut model and stuff." He didn't even look at me. Come to think of it, when a contest was near, a really cute cut model used to come to the salon after hours. Is she coming this time too? Is it the same cut model you usually have? I asked nonchalantly. Oliver exaggeratedly replied, "Yeah, that's right. I've been keeping her late. Really, I feel so bad about it." His manner of speaking seemed exaggerated. "What is this? This feels so forced." Doesn't his speech sound unnatural? Despite my feelings. Is that really okay? It's dangerous to keep a girl late every day, even if you're short on time. When I looked at Oliver, he seemed determined to avoid eye contact. Glancing at his watch, he said, Look at the time. I'm going to be late." Ignoring my words, he hurried out the door. Did he just run away? That reaction was so unnatural. Am I overthinking this? Could it be something with the cut model, an affair? No, that can't be it. The more I thought about it, the worse my thoughts got. After all, such things are unthinkable, aren't they? It's just my bad habit of overthinking. I need to stop that. It's just the late nights because of the hair contest preparations, that's all. Carrying these troubled thoughts, I got ready and headed to work. When I arrived at the shop, Mason, the manager of the salon where Oliver worked, was there picking out flowers for the salon. It was usually Oliver who picked the flowers, so it was unusual to see Mason here. Mason said he leaves the flower selection to Oliver because he doesn't know much about them. Could it be that Oliver asked Mason to pick the flowers to avoid further questions about this morning's conversation? I decided to probe a little. "Oliver is participating in a hair contest with you, right? Good luck with that," I said to Mason. But Mason looked confused. "Which hair contest? We don't have any such plans," he asked. I also asked about the cut model, but he said they hadn't requested any recently. Apparently, the model was Mason's cousin, who was currently studying abroad. As for the late nights, Mason said that Oliver had been leaving the salon at the regular closing time, so there was no way he had to come home after midnight. It seemed like everything Oliver told me was a lie. So, what had Oliver been doing every night, and with whom? While my suspicion about the cut model was cleared, I still felt uneasy. Stunned and trying to grasp the situation. Should I subtly ask him about it? Mason offered. I thought about accepting Mason's offer, but would Oliver give him a straight answer? I felt like Oliver, being so good at talking, would give vague responses. It seemed more likely that something was going on. I didn't want to give Oliver any chance to concoct an excuse. I had to keep it a secret that I was aware of his lies and probing into the matter. I told Mason that I would handle it myself for now, and asked him to keep our conversation secret, saying I would seek his advice if needed. That night, I decided to wait for Oliver and ask him as if I was oblivious to everything. I doubted he would tell me the truth anyway. Around midnight, Oliver finally came home. While claiming to have been working late, he looked slightly startled when he saw me waiting up. "I'm home. I'm exhausted. Finally got the new haircut done," he said, unaware that I knew everything. I wondered what kind of amazing haircut he completed. I asked Oliver, who was trying to mask his nervousness. "You must be worn out. Hey, do you mind if I ask something?" As I spoke quietly. "What's up? What do you want to know?" His voice trembled. "Are you really working? Are you really preparing for a hair contest?" Oliver replied. "Well, of course I am. What else would it be?" His unease was apparent. He seemed intent on sticking to his lies. "In that case." "Oh? What about cheating? Yes or no?" I asked directly, and his face changed completely. "What? Of course I'm not." Oliver began to get defensive. Even the usually eloquent Oliver had no room for jokes. Despite his panic, he tried to weave an escape with desperate excuses. "You know, Mason told me. The hair contest is a lie, right? Wouldn't it be better to just come clean? What are you really doing?" I cornered him with no escape. Apparently, he had no excuses left and, trembling with clenched fists, "Fine. I'll say it. It's an affair. I've fallen in love with someone else," he blurted out. His confession came off as resigned and frustrated. He even started to get angry, as if it was some sort of injustice. I tried to get him to confess who the other person was, but he refused to say, probably because it was someone he shouldn't be involved with. No matter how much I pressed, my anger only grew. "Then I'll hire a detective or whatever it takes to find out. Just be ready. It's Camila." Hearing my words, he went pale and confessed in a defeated tone. "Camila? Isn't she Lucas's wife?" I was shocked, and he retorted. "Yes, Camila. She's pregnant with my child." "You haven't had a child with me, but you did with someone else, and that someone is your brother's wife? That's despicable." As I hurled accusations at Oliver, he retorted with unreasonable words. "It's your fault for being infertile. Anyway, I'm going to take responsibility and divorce you." His words were infuriatingly unfair. That explained why he always sided with his Sael over me. "Are you kidding? Do you even realize what you're saying? Does Lucas know?" To have been treated this way by him, I couldn't help but be angry. "It doesn't matter. Camila and I won't be separated. She's going to divorce Lucas and be with me. No one can stop us," Oliver declared defiantly. "If you don't like it, then let's get a divorce right now." Disgusted by his words, I retorted. "Don't like it? That's an understatement. I'll gladly divorce you." I decided then and there to cut ties with this hopeless man. The next day, I told everything to my parents, my in-laws, and Lucas, who was at his assignment location. Shocked and furious, they couldn't believe Oliver and Camila had an affair and were expecting a child. Despite their family's reactions, both were unapologetic and brazen. "All this is Asael's fault, right? If she's upset about the affair or didn't notice it, it's her own fault. If Lucas wants to blame someone, he should blame Asael." Camila even had the audacity to put the blame on me. Their lack of remorse disgusted everyone. Lucas decided to divorce Camila, and both Oliver and Camila were disowned by our parents and Lucas. Later, when I reported the situation to Mason, the concerned salon manager, he was one of our recommended hairstylists. "This could affect our salon's reputation. I need to think about what to do with Oliver," he said while crossing his arms. 3 months later, after Camila's remarriage prohibition period ended, she and Oliver got married. Yet, for some reason, I was getting calls from Oliver on my mobile phone. I was at work, and as far as I was concerned, he was a person from my past. I had nothing to say to him, yet he kept calling persistently if I ignored him. Oliver, still somehow keeping his job under Mason's management and working in the beauty salon on the 2nd floor, was someone I don't want showing up at the flower shop. Reluctantly, I answered the call. "Hey, can you help me out here?" His voice was weak and pitiful, a far cry from his earlier bravado. "Why should I? I have no obligation to help you. Can you stop bothering me during work? As I was about to hang up. Don't be so cold. Can I come over to talk? Oliver appeared to really want to talk. Not wanting him to actually come, I decided to listen. It turned out he was in quite a laughable predicament. According to Oliver, on the day they registered their marriage, Camila received a demand for alimony in a divorce lawsuit via a formal notice. What's this about? He questioned, and it turned out Camila had been having an affair with her boss, and his wife found out, demanding $50,000 in alimony. Moreover, she was pregnant, and it was unclear whether the child was Oliver's or her boss's. He might end up raising a child that isn't his. I have no confidence in raising a child that might not be mine. Tell me how to get a divorce. His SOS to me was the last thing I needed. Just say what you told me, was all the advice I gave. That's it. That was the last call I ever received from Oliver. Nevertheless, both my former sister-in-law and ex-husband were such despicable people. They were both broke after paying us alimony in the divorce suits. Oliver was likely to be fired by Mason now, and with Camila's affair scandal at work, she would probably be fired too, burdened with a hefty debt of $50,000 for alimony. What would they do now? Face bankruptcy? It seemed like a miserable life awaits them, socially and personally obliterated. As for me, I remarried a man who supplies flowers to my shop and am expecting a long-awaited child. I live happily, surrounded by beautiful flowers, a kind and honest husband, and looking forward to holding my lovely child. Despite being called plain, living true to myself is best. I've learned my lesson to stay away from smooth talkers and those who look down on others.